Happy Lunar New Year. Since we couldn't be together in person to have a dumpling party, I thought I would bring the dumpling party to you and describe my process for making dumplings, since a lot of people have asked me. So first I wanted to talk about what equipment you need. I actually use my stand mixer to make both the dough and the filling. My parents use a bread machine to make the dough, and they use just a bowl and some chopsticks to make the filling. But definitely don't need machines. You could definitely knead the dough by hand and use a bowl to mix the filling. So what you'll need to roll out the dumpling dough is, what is this called?
It's a rolling pin.
A rolling pin. Thank you, Davey. And a tray to put your dumplings on. That makes it a lot easier to carry over to your pot to put the dumplings in. And I use a bench scraper to cut my dough, but you could definitely also just use a knife or your fingers. And you will need the largest stock pot that you own to boil your dumplings. Dumplings take up a lot more space than pasta or ravioli, so they need a lot of space to bob around. The first thing that I do is make the dough, and then the dough has to rest for about 30 minutes. So then I make the filling as the dough is resting. So what I do for the dough is I use 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour and a cup of warm water. And actually this time, I'm trying something different. I'm using the water that's squeezed out from my blanched vegetables instead of just tap water to add a little extra flavor. And this part, honestly, I haven't totally figured out yet. I do some experimenting. So 2.5 cups of flour to 1 cup of water. Sometimes it's too loose and sometimes it's too dry, so you just sort of experiment with it. And in my stand mixer, I actually use the paddle attachment. You can also use the dough attachment, but I just prefer the paddle. That's 1 cup and 2 cups. And you can also use bread flour. I've done that in the past and it hasn't really made a difference. This is not baking. Okay. So let's check that consistency. I think this is pretty good actually. It's pretty sticky still, but you can see that it doesn't really stick to the bowl, and that's sort of what you want. I might add a little more flour, but I think this is probably fine. And then I'll just wrap this dough up in plastic and let it sit for about half an hour. Okay, actually this is sticking. If you can show them, this is not what you want, so I would just add a little more flour and let it knead for a little longer until it stops sticking to the bowl but is still sticky.
Filling time?
Filling time. So while my dough is resting, I'm going to make the filling, and I don't really use a recipe for this. If you want a recipe, I recommend Fuchsia Dunlap's book. Every Grain of Rice has some pretty good dumpling recipes in it, but what I do is I take a package of ground pork. This is 16 ounces, and then about an equal amount of a blanched dark leafy green. So I'm using shepherd's purse or Chinese spinach for this, but you can also use regular spinach or kale or whatever, chard. And you want to make sure that your greens are chopped up, or else your dumplings are going to be hard to eat and stringy. So other than those 2 ingredients, I also add about 2 cloves of garlic, a little bit of, I guess that's kind of a lot, of ginger, and some scallions, and a splash of how do you pronounce this? Shaoxing cooking wine. You can also use sherry. A splash of soy sauce, sesame oil, an egg for to help it bind together better. You don't need that. And I also add either a little bit of bouillon or miso for some extra flavor, or both. So now I have everything chopped up. Do you want to show them? And I'm going to put my ground pork in my mixing bowl and everything else too. And crack my egg and put it in. Add a splash of the cooking wine. And a splash of soy sauce. Add a splash of sesame oil. Add a spoonful of miso paste. Not that much. And a spoonful of bouillon. Just use different spoon. Okay. Not a whole spoonful, like that much. Okay, and I'm just gonna mix it in the mixer for until it's mixed. Oh, and some salt. And pepper. I use white pepper for dumplings. Smells good. So that's what that looks like. Wow, it's a lot of vegetables. So this is all like very haphazard, but my trick for this is also very experimental. And I spoon some of this into a little bowl and microwave it, and taste test and figure out whether it needs anything more, so that I make sure the filling is to my liking before I start wrapping. You filming? Okay, so after about 15 to 20 seconds in the microwave, this is what we have, and I'm gonna test it out. I think it's pretty good. Saltier than I expected it to be. Does anybody want to try it?
Yeah, I say it's perfect.
Okay, cool. So we're all good on the filling. Okay, so now we have our ball of dough. It's been less than 30 minutes, but I'm impatient. Make sure that your work surface and your tray are both well floured. And I'm gonna cut this piece of dough in half to make it easier to work with. And then what you want to do is make a donut and roll it out. I guess I should say we're making wrappers now, but you probably figured that out. And then you're going to take your bench scraper, yeah, or your knife, and start just making little bits. I haven't really figured out how big these are supposed to be. This is about the size of a little smaller than a golf ball, I would say. I usually like go back and forth in the direction that I'm cutting it so that they become rounder. If that makes any sense. This might be too big. Oh, it gets fat over here. Okay. And then just roll it around the flour a little bit. So now we're going to press them down into a circle shape, or as circular as you can get them, really. And then as we roll them out, usually we have one person rolling the wrappers and another person filling the wrappers. Ooh, that's a really big one. We're gonna have some big dumplings.
Should do the other half small dumplings for comparison.
And for variety. Okay, so I would say that this is about the size that you want. You like compare it to the size of my hand. I have pretty small hands though, so compare it to the size of Davey's hand. Yeah, okay.
I have fairly big hands.
It's true, somewhere in the middle of that is normal hands. Okay, so to roll it out, you're gonna wanna use the palm, is this the palm? The palm of your hand, and make like a rocking back and forth motion as you spin the piece of dough. And usually there's a bump of dough in the middle. So I'll just show you. So that's what our piece of dough looks like. And then you're gonna fill that with not too much filling, so you don't want it to overflow. So then the way that I fold it is I pinch the middle, and then I sort of, on one side, pinch towards the middle. Same thing with this side, pinch towards the middle. And then here you have a dumpling. And it doesn't really matter what your dumpling looks like as long as you make sure that the dough is closed so that your meat doesn't fall out. So you could just like fold it over and squish it, or you could like make tortellini shapes or whatever you want to do. And then just set it on your prepared tray.
Just a few more to make.
So we're making about 30 dumplings with this recipe, and as you can see, they are sort of all sorts of sizes. I guess consistency is not really our forte, nor is it something that we strive for, because it just brings me so much joy to see the big dumplings next to the baby dumplings. To boil our dumplings, I have my water at a rolling boil, and I guess, ow, that was hot. Don't do that. Put them in gently. We're learning as we go. And my mom says that they're done when they start to like float on the surface. And you can test by just, taking one out and cracking it open and seeing if the meat is cooked inside. And I would recommend testing on your largest dumpling if you have variation in size like we do. And I just want to note that I have a bunch of filling left over. And So you can either freeze that to use for dumplings later, or you can stir fry it and eat it, or make it with a steamed egg or omelet. Okay, the dumplings are floating now, so I'm going to fish out the largest one and see if the meat's done on the inside. It is definitely not done, so I'll put that back in. Usually the dumplings we make are a lot smaller. Don't drop them in. Oh, I did it again. So the floating rule works, but for these larger dumplings it doesn't really work. How long has it been, Davey?
4 minutes.
Okay, so I would say it takes probably about 4 to 5 minutes for small dumplings, and for larger ones, maybe like 7 minutes. I can squat. So our dumplings are done, and just a note about how to eat them or what to serve them with. Usually we eat them with black vinegar and laogama chili oil. And the best thing to eat it with is homemade black vinegar that's been infused with garlic. So enjoy! Happy New Year!